Grazing pigs on cover crops that can grow back can be a little bit of a challenge. Most of the time when we graze pigs on cover crops, we're planning on the pigs eating the entire cover crop. However, our warm season cover crop mix that includes cowpeas, hybrid pearl millet, sorghum Sudangrass, sunflowers, okra, some brassicas, and some other things as well, especially buckwheat, can provide a whole lot of benefit for soil life, and the sorghum Sudangrass and the hybrid pearl millet regrow after grazing. So if we graze it pretty heavily and then move the livestock off of it in a week or so, then we can actually allow that stuff to regrow. And the regrowth of sorghum Sudangrass especially improves soil life more than you can imagine. So rather than having roots that grow 2 or 3 feet deep, sorghum Sudangrass that's grown and grazed, when those roots regrow, they can actually penetrate down 4 and even 5 feet deep into the soil surface. So it provides a whole lot of benefit. The problem, however, if you're raising pastured pigs on a small scale and you want to improve soil life, if you want to be able to grow something like sorghum Sudangrass that'll regrow after grazing, managing it after the pigs are on the pasture can be a little bit of a challenge. So I've tried a few different ways of letting it regrow, and today I want to just walk you around and show you a couple different ways that you can, on a small scale with just a little bit of equipment, how you can manage that itself. Let's first take a look into this paddock that the pigs are in right now. So Bubba helped me move these pigs into this paddock this past Friday. Today is Sunday, so they've been in here 2 days. The cover crop looks like they've annihilated it, and for the most part, when the pigs come through, they first go after the buckwheat seed, and then they start eating other things. Much of the forage itself is knocked down to the ground initially. You can see that this forage is covering the ground pretty solidly, and it looks quite thick for the most part. Now I'm standing here right now. Oh, hey buddy. Sorry, Ferdinand wanted to be petted. I'm standing on the edge next to the shade, so it's not quite as thick here as it is further out. And of course the pigs are going to graze, as you can see here, they're grazing closer in the shade more than they are in the sunshine. But even out here you can tell that the pigs have knocked it down to the ground. There are a few spots that look bare, but for the most part there's a pretty solid layer of grassy debris, cover crop debris that's on the ground. And then there's still a good bit that's standing. But I'll show you on another area just kind of what it looked like, just to give you a little bit of an idea. It was kind of like this area where you've got some of the cover crop that's grown up. That's about 3.5 or 4 feet. And then there are some areas like this right here that were 5 or 6 feet tall. It was a little bit thin. You can see how thin this is. The buckwheat was grown and there just hadn't been much growing up in it. And of course you can see some chicory down in the bottom, along with a few places you could see a little bit of purple top turnip and other things. So the pigs have been in this paddock now for 2 full days. And realistically, it'll probably be Friday before I move them off of this paddock. And it may be a little bit more, a little bit less. I try to give them about 1/3 of an acre of dense cover crop for the 6 pigs that I have in this paddock. Now you probably saw the babies. They're not eating a whole lot, but their mother is in milk, so they're still, it's probably the equivalent of more like 7 large pigs in the field here. But they'll go through and they'll eat even a lot of this stuff that's laying on the ground. They'll eat it. They'll prefer some things like that cowpea right there, and then they'll come back and eat some of the less nutritious stuff like the grasses that don't have quite as much protein and lysine and all for them as well. So that's the paddock that they're in. This is the paddock that I moved them off of, and it was just under 1/3 of an acre of actual cover crop feed value. Now, there was some random grass like right here. It's been mown since the pigs were on it. And so there was still a good bit of stuff that was growing tall. You can see that they haven't knocked it all down, but they've done a good bit of work to it. Just to offer a point of reference, if we had left the pigs on here for another week, then it would look more like this paddock over here. Now, right now, this paddock looks like there's a lot growing on it. And there is a good bit more coming up now. But this paddock looked just like that right there. This whole 1/3 of an acre, the pigs were on there 2 weeks, and this whole 1/3 of an acre looked bare just like that. The pigs knocked everything down, and then they grazed as much as they could. If the pigs had been on here for a week, I would have fed them about 20% of their normal feed value for that week. However, at 2 weeks, you have to feed them closer to about 50 or 60% of their normal feed ration, just because that last week they're not getting nearly the nutrition from the crops that they're eating, but they will tighten it up pretty well. So if you wanted to try growing the sorghum Sudangrass cover crop, let the pigs graze it to the ground. As you can tell, it'll regrow some. There's some cowpea right there that's growing back, and then that right there is some of the buckwheat that's gone back to seed and regrown, and it'll start growing as well. I'll update you later on what this looks like, but surprisingly enough, I mean, it is growing back better than I would have thought. I have not seeded it since the pigs were on here. Now, I normally do not leave the pigs on here this long. I just happened to be in the hospital for several days, and I had some friends taking care of the farm for me. So after 5 days, you can see that there's still a good bit of cover crop here for the pigs to eat. To be honest with you, I'm going to try mowing this just to give you an idea of what this cover crop mix does if it's regrown. Now, this is just under 1/3 of an acre. I'm mowing it with my 0-turn lawnmower. I'm not using a bush hog or a tractor of any kind. So even if you had just 5 or 6 pigs, depending on how big they were, you could grow this cover crop and let them graze it all the way to the ground, or you could graze it and just move them off of it, or you could graze it and come back and mow it with a lawnmower. From my experience, lawnmowers mow it down a little bit too much, but I'm just going to experiment on this paddock and let you know what it looks like. In this paddock, I have not actually mown it or done anything with it. I just let it regrow after the pigs were on it. Now, you can tell that it's a little bit weedier. You can see the pigweed that's growing up in here. There's morning glory as well. So this spiny amaranth, their pigweed, is growing. The morning glory is growing. But there's still a good bit of hybrid pearl millet and sorghum Sudangrass that's growing back. Some of it, like if it was not eaten at the ground, you can see that the sorghum Sudangrass here is going to seed. In an ideal world, that would have been cut right about there and let it regrow so it wouldn't have gone to seed, but that's okay. The thing is you don't have to have any equipment, heavy equipment or anything else, to be able to grow cover crops for your livestock to eat. Buddy? Did Evan and Bubba not rub your head while I was gone? Huh? Oh, you needing some scratching, aren't you? Yeah. Sorry, Ferdinand wanted some head rubs. If you have like 40 or 50 pound pigs, they're not going to get as much benefit from grazing these cover crops. I would start those off with something like a higher portion of buckwheat than I would of something like Sorghum Sudangrass, primarily because they have smaller gastrointestinal tracts and they have a harder time processing the fiber and the lignin and the cellulose in the grasses, whereas grains are a little bit more nutritious for them. So things like brassicas, clovers, and buckwheat I find to be better for smaller sized pigs. But once you get into the 100 to 125 pound range for your pigs, even a little bit smaller, you can save a lot of money by grazing cover crops, and they'll improve your soil health as well. And it doesn't take heavy equipment. Anyway, hope you have a great day. It's Rob from Dowdle Family Farms. Take care.